melt is when I'm ocean waves.
Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have Johns Hopkins women's coach Dan Weiler, whose team recently qualified for the Final Four in Salem, Virginia this week. Coach, congratulations and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure to chat a little bit, and I always love to share our story a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's a good story. You guys are undefeated. You're 21 wins and 2 ties, I believe. You've had a great career as a coach. I was going through your record, and it took you a while to get started at Johns Hopkins because of the COVID delays. But I understand you were at Christopher Newport for several years, and I think you were National Coach of the Year in 2018.
Yeah. I've been fortunate to work for some great places, and really has led me to where I am now. And love this place, love the school, absolutely love coaching these student athletes, and I've been really fortunate to work with some really amazing people.
Yeah, well, obviously they have an amazing coach. I see you're from Fargo, North Dakota, which I know is a hotbed of soccer, especially women's soccer. So how did you get started in the sport?
Initially, I played from, when I was really little, and, played all the way through my life, and had to make a decision where I was going to go to school. And I went somewhere local, and then started to kind of get tied into coaching, mainly, at least initially, through the local high school that I played at. And because my youngest brother was a senior, and I just thought, I'll just try this out and, hang around him and see if I can give back a little bit. And honestly, from that first year, I just got really hooked with it. And I became, probably the best word is, obsessed with the idea of a group of people coming together, the idea of how to build team culture, and then just the game itself, trying to learn as much as I can about the actual game and trying to teach it better and so on. And I just got really absorbed in that. And I was, at the time, a middle school math teacher. And so I was kind of doing like these 2-3 different things, and eventually became a high school coach on the girls' side. And then moved into the college game at Concordia College, and was an assistant there for a little while, and then moved into the head coaching job. And then from there, coached men and women, and then back to women. And I just loved the whole ride. I mean, I for a big portion of that, at least when I was in the Midwest, I was doing kind of double duty, but always knew that I really wanted to do this as a full-time profession, which I was fortunate to have that opportunity at Concordia, to finally get into that full-time status. And then opportunity kind of arose with Christopher Newport. They were looking for a change, in what they were doing, and I didn't know anyone, but I was able to, get out into the East Coast, and had a good time there, built them up a little bit. And then this opportunity at Johns Hopkins opened up, and it was, really an amazing place. I'd known about the program before, even when I was at Concordia, just the notoriety and the prestige of the school, and the success that they've had over the years is very notable, and something that I recognized. And so something that was of high interest to me. And then when I got on campus and I met the team, and I met the staff and the administration, I mean, it was, a real dream job for me. And so thankfully I was hired, and here we are.
Do you find coaching the women's game very different than coaching the men's game? And do you have a preference, or you just like good soccer?
I mean, I do like good soccer. I think in my experience, I coached men and women for about 4 or 5 years at the same time. And there certainly are differences to how you coach one versus the other. But I would say there are more similarities than anything. I think the approach I brought to both programs was actually quite similar. And both the teams at the time were really eager to learn, and eager to kind of put into place a lot of those things. I personally, at that time, I was also able to kind of reflect on like which one is a little bit better suited for my personality. And for me, coaching women has always been a little bit more close to my heart. And so most of my career has been coaching women, and I think that has been a better fit for me personally.
Well, you've done it for a long time. Not calling you old because I'm much older than you are. But have you found that soccer, the game, and also coaching has changed a lot in your time in the game?
I think it has. I mean, I think the foundation of it's still pretty similar, but you look back 20 years ago and the structure of youth soccer was just kind of in its infancy a little bit. I mean, now we have full national leagues, we have players traveling, and for good or bad, they're traveling all over the place. There's the competition level. They're bringing a lot of those top end players together to compete against each other. So you do see a little different experience level of the club player coming into college as if you compare it to 20 years ago, even 10 years ago to a certain degree. And so I think the amount of opportunity that Title IX certainly created, and that a lot of programs investing in women's sports, that's just fueled that fire, thankfully, that the opportunity for them as female athletes to have an opportunity to continue this thing that they love to do, and whether it be soccer or something else, has really spurred that also. So I think, for us, and when we're recruiting, we're certainly looking for high level, elite athletes. And we're also fortunate that we attract players really from all over the world, all over the country for sure, and even over the world. So a lot of them bring lots of different high level experiences with them. And so that's the starting point of where we start now, I think, compared to where the game is a little bit higher.
Has your coaching philosophy changed a lot through the years, or has there been consistency to it? I mean, one thing about soccer, a lot of times there are fads, and a lot of times it's driven by the teams on top. I remember when Spain won the World Cup in 2010 and Barcelona was obviously on top. Everyone wanted to play, the triangles and the ticky-tack. And then, when Germany won, it was more direct. Liverpool's had success, a little bit more direct with Klopp. How about personally, have you found your coaching philosophy changed a lot over the years?
Not the core of it hasn't changed. I mean, the way in which I think philosophy and style are kind of, they're intertwined, but to me, they're slightly different. So in how I've tried to incorporate a group of people and try to have them think about themselves beyond themselves, and that the group is the driving force, and that their individual needs come second, and all of those kind of elements. I think I've fine-tuned that, but that's always been a real common thread to anything that I've done. And really, going back to what I said initially with what got me into coaching, was that idea of, how do you do this, and how can I help facilitate that? And based on my experiences as an athlete, when good or bad, how would I want that to be different for athletes that I coach? So that's been really pretty consistent, although I've tried to do a lot of reading and research to make it better. I think the style for me has changed a bit. I mean, we get that's a very common question we get from recruits is, what style do you play? And which is a very important question for them to ask, because every player is a little bit different and they want to enter an environment that suits them. But I think that the short answer to that question, and at least at the college level, is the style that wins. And it's, each school has to determine what does that mean, and not only what are you trying to win, and what level you're trying to win at, and how does that relate to the teams that you're competing against, but what kind of players can you attract, and what kind of players can you really consistently try to recruit and actually successfully recruit. So for us, the style, even from last year to this year, has been a pretty big evolution. I mean, we've kept the ball a lot more. We've gotten more people involved in the attack, and our stats and all those things kind of prove that. But I think for me, the idea of style, a style that wins, but also a style that really is an attractive style of attacking soccer, that has changed because of the nature of the kind of student athletes that we're able to recruit at the places I've been able to be fortunate to coach at.
I would think recruiting would be a different challenge at Hopkins than it was at Christopher Newport. Christopher Newport is a very solid state school in Virginia, really up and coming. I know in Northern Virginia where I live, I mean, that's a hot name here, and we're getting a lot of athletes playing soccer on both sides, but also basketball and football. Really good players from the area. A top running back just signed there recently. But Johns Hopkins, I actually know a really good player that my son played with. That I know the coach loved him, but he didn't even get into it was hard to get in, and he got into UVA. So it seems like it could be a very challenging place to recruit, in that you got to have not just great students, but excellent students before you even consider whether or not they will fit into your soccer plans.
It is, and it's I would call our biggest asset and biggest challenge. Is the asset being our name is nationwide and worldwide for a reason. The programs we have, particularly in certain areas of study, are some of the best in the world. And given that, we search for some of the most elite students across the world. And so, a big part of our job is to make sure we're trying to find the right fit for the team, the right fit athletically and competitively, but also do they fit well with the school? And so we work with the parameters as admission sets them, and we do the best we can. And we've had 2 really good recruiting classes, I think, and so we'll continue to try to bring real quality student athletes into the team and see how they match up against other schools. But I will say the difference is, it did open a big door to the whole rest of the country. As you mentioned, Christopher Newport is a very regional, if not state-driven school. And so they're bringing players in from that particular area more so than anywhere else, whereas we're bringing student athletes in from every state. And so when we recruit at these national events, we really have access to every one of those teams. And then it's a matter of finding that particular person or more on a team, but usually 1 or 2 that might fit with all of the things that are really required for us to be able to have them here.
Are you often surprised that a player that you thought would be Division I is all of a sudden available to you?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say surprised, because I think those that have turned down Division I offers or kind of pivoted into something more in line with what we offer, it makes sense because of the quality of the education and the experience that they have and what they're trying to do in their next steps of their lives. It suits them a bit better at Johns Hopkins than it does at some of these others. And that's what we really hope for, is we hope to find the best, the most elite student athletes that we can, whether you label that as a potential Division I athlete or not. Like, I don't really care as much as do they fit well with our style, our philosophy, and do they fit with the school just in general too, academically.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your team. You got 4 players that have scored 12 goals. So you got lots of goals coming from different directions. Must be really difficult to defend. I know one of your players, Katie Sullivan, has only a sophomore, has 14 goals and 12 assists. That's pretty incredible stats. So tell us about your team and the way this team has been playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good place to start. Is the balance of scoring is certainly difficult to defend, and you can see, like, through the course of the season where someone gets a little hot that one game or a couple games, and someone gets a little hot the next game. And then we've had some people really consistently scoring for a couple months. And so I think, in years past, I've had teams that are really, really good, or played against teams that are really good and elite. But to have multiple scoring options is, as you said, very difficult at times to defend, because you can't focus all of your attention on, say, one player or even 2 players. And they're very different type of scorers. So you have to, in my mind, do a little bit of your research on how we play to really see the nuances of all those things. But beyond that, I mean, our back line and our keeper have been fantastic. I mean, I think we're at 17 shutouts now, which is tied for a school record. And I mean, we're not giving up much on the other side of the ball, and been really disciplined, and I feel like the team makes the game hard for other teams. And then we have players in place that can score. So for us, and really in our game generally, that's a good recipe to have.
Yeah. Well, one thing about Division III, it's got a very interesting playoff system in that you have two sets of two games in a row, and then you get 2 weeks off with Thanksgiving in the middle. Then you go to the Final Four. And then in the Sweet 16, I believe you played Williams College, and it was your first close game in a while. How did the team react to that? Were you happy with how they handled it? Sometimes when things are, I'm not saying easy, but when you're winning by a few goals and then all of a sudden it's close, you wait to see how your team responds.
Yeah, it was a really pivotal moment for us, and what catapulted us into winning that game, and then I think winning the next game. But the context of those moments comes from how the team is training and how the team is pushing each other before that. So you're right. I think up to that point, we had quite a few games that were not easy games, but by the scoreline, if you look back at them, you say, well, you were cruising after a certain point, but there were points in that game that were hard. The difference, of course, in the Williams game is we went down and we had to come back. And that happens in training all the time. I mean, our group really trains hard. They've been super focused and really, and I said this to them 2 days ago. I said we won that game 3 days before that because of the way that the team was training and the way that the team was preparing for moments like that. And certainly you have to still do it when the moment arises, which we did. And thankfully for my heart, we scored within 21 seconds afterwards, which was a little bit surprising that it happened that quickly, but it leveled the game back to 0. And then essentially, and then we got the go ahead and then held on. But there was also one moment at the very end that they had a set piece that was right in front of goal, and it was scary, and we defended it well, and that's what kind of sealed the game off. But I think you have to prepare yourselves for as much as you can for those moments in training, and then they translate, you hope later. So, it's part of our game, just generally, we don't score. Our game isn't usually in especially in the tournament, as you get further along, usually pretty tight games. Usually if you're winning a game by 2, that's a pretty big margin. So you're figuring a 1-goal game or those kind of situations are going to happen, which means you have to be prepared for the ebbs and the flows of the game, and you can't overreact or underreact. And so far the team has been really handling the tournament quite well. And as you mentioned, we have this kind of strange break. I think it's a really fortunate break because our players and every player that that's still playing, they need that time to kind of re-energize and rest and so on. And our team particularly, we have players that haven't seen their parents for months, and they got to go home and they got to be take a break and actually spend time with family and re-energize in a different way. And that's been really important too. So we're back obviously now training and back to the grindstone, but we feel like that period of time, if you use it right, and that it can be really really helpful for you now, and then you gear back up for what's happening this weekend.
Yeah. Well, you're coming to Salem. Welcome to Virginia. I believe you guys are playing Messiah. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. And they're also, I think, really good in boys, just like Hopkins is good in both, and Christopher Newport is good in both. What do you know about Messiah? I don't believe you guys played this year, did you?
We did. Yeah, we played early in the year. Yeah, we played at their place. That's a common tradition game. So we played Hopkins, Messiah played together, one another home and away for probably the last 15 years, maybe more. So it's a pretty it's always a great game. It's always a great matchup. They do an awesome job there. They will be prepared, they will be organized, and we will bring everything we have to the game. And I think it's going to be a really great battle of 2 really top end Division III teams. And we'll see who wins on the day. But we're excited about the challenge and excited to play kind of a common opponent to a certain extent, but just get another crack at them and them get a crack at us, because we tied that game. So and we tied last year. So since I've been here at Hopkins, the game hasn't been won or lost by either team. So it'll be exciting to see, which way that turns this week.
As a coach, would you rather play a familiar team or a team, a brand new team? So it's, usually at a Final Four, it might be a matchup of a team you've never seen before. But again, this is a familiar friend. Which one would you prefer?
Well, it depends how good the teams are. I mean, if the advantage you gain is, of course, the team a little bit better. Some of the players even a bit better than someone that you didn't have. I mean, we do have some film sharing and so on that we didn't have even 2 years ago, that you do get access to that team. So if it's not a team that you would have access to some of their film and so on. But to know them and to actually play them is different than to watch them on film. And so I think there's a little bit of comfort maybe in knowing a little bit more, but also, people can decide to make changes and since the first time you saw them and so on. And so it comes down to, at the end of the day, whose scheme kind of works on the day and which players can kind of put that into action, but then also a little bit of luck here and there. And then, we're a game of chances. And so which team is going to create more chances and so on. So it's going to be fun. Yeah.
Well, Coach, look, I'm excited for you. It's nothing like being in a Final Four, I'm sure. Not that I've ever been there, but I've seen it done. But I do wish you luck. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
No problem. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the time. And you should come to Salem.
Yeah, I would love to. My dad's from Bedford, which is 25 miles away. I would love to. I love soccer, and I've never been to a Division III game. I go to the Georgetown women's games all the time, and I've been to the Mary Washington boys games. So yeah. I would love to. So maybe next season, Hopkins probably plays Catholic or something like that. I'm sure, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's a common one. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm if not this week, definitely down the road.
Sounds good. All right. Good to meet you.
Yeah, you too, Coach. Thanks again. Good luck.
Later. Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.